The day started like any other on the human colony planet of Faro. The sun shone brightly over the peaceful fields, and children played freely, running through the grass with laughter in the air. The colony had been thriving for years, untouched by war or danger. But that peaceful morning was about to turn into a nightmare. Without warning, a massive shadow appeared across the sky. The children stopped playing, their smiles fading as they looked up in confusion. A huge, dark alien ship loomed above the colony, its shape nothing like anything humans had ever seen. The ship was enormous, a blend of sleek metal and jagged edges, with glowing red lights flashing along its hull. It was clear that this was no ordinary spacecraft. It was a warship, and it had come for something or someone. The humans below, seeing the alien ship, began to panic. The alarms blared through the colony, and people scrambled to hide or protect their families. But no one was prepared for what would come next. The ship's hull opened with a mechanical groan, and from within, soldiers emerged, aliens unlike any species the humans had encountered before. They were tall, muscular beings with dark blue skin, and their eyes glowed with a cold, merciless light. Their armor was dark and foreboding, and they moved with a precision that sent a chill down the spines of the people who saw them. These were not explorers or traders. They were soldiers, and they were here to conquer. The leader of the alien force, a ruthless warlord named Vrax, stepped forward from his command ship. His eyes scanned the colony below, his lips curling into a cruel smile. He had no interest in the peaceful lives of these humans. To him, they were weak, insignificant, and ripe for exploitation. He had heard of the humans' potential, but he did not believe in the warning that had spread across the galaxy. He did not believe that harming a human child would have any consequences. He thought it was nothing more than a myth, a story to scare lesser beings. But he would soon learn how wrong he was. Vrax's orders were clear. He commanded his soldiers to secure the area and capture the young human child who had wandered too far from safety. The child, a girl no older than 8, had been playing near the edge of the colony. She didn't understand what was happening, but when the soldiers approached, she froze in fear. The aliens moved quickly, their weapons drawn, and within moments, the girl was captured. Her cries echoed through the air as she was dragged away, her small body struggling against the strength of the aliens. The humans watching in horror had no way to stop it. The soldiers were too powerful, their weapons too advanced. Vrax watched the capture with a cold satisfaction. He didn't understand why the child had been so important, but it didn't matter. He had heard the rumors about humans being special, about their potential to become a powerful force in the galaxy, but to him, it was all nonsense. The girl was just another weak human, easy to manipulate, easy to control. His people had conquered countless worlds before. What made this one any different? But as the girl was taken aboard the alien ship, something strange began to happen. Vrax's ship, a war machine capable of wiping out entire fleets, started to experience odd malfunctions. It was subtle at first. One of the ship's engines flickered, then the weapons systems failed for a brief moment. The crew reported strange readings on their scanners, but they were unable to explain the anomalies. Vrax dismissed it as a minor technical issue. He had seen such things before. The ship was old, and the technology wasn't always reliable. Still, the growing sense of unease gnawed at him. Meanwhile, the humans on the ground were growing desperate. Word of the child's capture spread like wildfire. Families feared the worst, knowing that without intervention, the girl would never be seen again. But no one knew what could be done. They were outmatched, outgunned, and alone. The government had warned them about the possibility of hostile alien forces, but they had never imagined it would happen so soon. And they had certainly never expected it to happen like this, so violently, so quickly. As the day wore on, the atmosphere grew more tense. News of the warning, the one that had been sent to every corner of the galaxy, began to surface. It was said that the warning had been issued by an unknown force, one that had watched over the galaxy for centuries. The message was simple: harm a human child, and the galaxy will pay the price. The message echoed through the minds of those who heard it. At first, they had brushed it off as nothing more than an old legend, a fairy tale to keep people in line. But now, as the alien ship hovered over the colony, something in the back of their minds told them the warning was not just a myth. The capture of the child was not a random event. It was the beginning of something far more dangerous. As the hours passed, the humans began to realize something they hadn't before. This wasn't just an attack on their colony. It was an attack on something much greater. They had been warned, but they had ignored it. Now, they would have to face the consequences. The message had been sent, and the galaxy was watching. The aliens, arrogant and dismissive, believed they could get away with their actions. But the forces that protected humanity, forces beyond their understanding, were now beginning to stir. The first signs of this began to show when Vrax's ship experienced another strange malfunction. This time, it was worse. The entire power grid began to flicker, and then, without warning, the ship's systems shut down completely. Vrax cursed and ordered his engineers to fix the problem. But it wasn't just the ship's technology that was failing. It was the very fabric of reality around them. The aliens had made a grave mistake. They had crossed a line, and now they would pay for it. The consequences of their actions were only beginning to unfold, and they were far more terrifying than anything Vrax could have ever imagined. The galaxy had warned them. Now, they would learn the price of their arrogance. As the alien warship loomed above the colony, the situation began to escalate quickly. The humans, once confident in their peace, were now thrown into chaos. The air was thick with tension as the alien soldiers advanced, their cold, emotionless eyes scanning the terrified faces of the inhabitants. The soldiers moved with precision, their weapons raised, and the once calm streets were now filled with the sounds of screams and the frantic calls for safety. It was clear this was no ordinary invasion. The leader of the alien forces, Vrax, stepped forward with a chilling calmness. He surveyed the colony with contempt, his mind dismissing the warning as nothing more than an empty threat. He had conquered countless worlds before, each one more advanced than the last, and he had never once feared the consequences of his actions. To him, humanity was just another species to be subdued, another race to be experimented on. He ordered his troops to round up the children, intending to take them back to his ship for further study. Among them, the young girl who had been playing in the park was seized. Her cries filled the air as she was roughly dragged towards the alien ship. On board the warship, Vrax watched the capture with satisfaction, believing that his victory was all but certain. His men moved swiftly, securing the ship and preparing to leave the planet behind. The humans had no hope of stopping them. They were weak, powerless, and they had no idea who they were dealing with. Vrax laughed at the absurdity of the warning that had come to him. Who would dare challenge his might? The universe, in his eyes, was a place for the strong to dominate, and humanity, so young and fragile, was no different from the countless species that had bent the knee before him. He thought of the girl as nothing more than a prize, a symbol of his dominance over this insignificant colony. But as the ship ascended into the dark sky, Vrax could not shake a strange feeling of unease. It was a flicker in the corner of his mind, a whisper that something was off. The ship's systems began to glitch as they entered orbit, the lights flickering for a brief moment, followed by an unexpected engine malfunction. Vrax dismissed it as a technical issue, nothing more. But even as the ship soared through space, he couldn't ignore the nagging sensation that the warning he had dismissed so easily might be more than just a myth. Back on the planet, the colony's resistance began to form. A small group of humans, along with a few alien allies who had once fought beside them in past skirmishes, began to discuss their next move. They knew they couldn't match the alien fleet in power, but they had one advantage: their knowledge of the galaxy's darker corners. The warning that had been sent across the stars was now starting to make sense to them. The humans were not alone in the galaxy. There were powerful forces, ancient ones, that had long watched over their kind, ensuring their survival. This mysterious force had made it clear. Harming a human child was a mistake that would come with grave consequences. The Resistance knew they had to act quickly. They couldn't waste time debating the mysterious origins of the warning. All they had to do was wait for the right moment, and then they could strike back. But even as they began to plan, the question remained, who had sent the warning, and how had they known that this particular child would be the catalyst for something much larger? The answers were still unknown, but one thing was certain: the galaxy would soon learn the cost of underestimating humanity. As the alien ship drifted further into deep space, the tension on board grew. Vrax sat in his command chair, staring at the viewports, but his mind was elsewhere. Despite his arrogance, he could not shake the unease that had settled over him. His warship, once a symbol of power and dominance, was now behaving erratically. The malfunctioning systems continued to worsen, and the crew began reporting strange readings. At first, Vrax dismissed it as nothing more than a technical glitch, something that could be fixed once they returned to their homeworld. But as the hours passed, the anomalies grew more pronounced, and the feeling of something deeply wrong became harder to ignore. It wasn't until the sudden appearance of an unexpected fleet that Vrax's confidence began to falter. Without warning, a group of ships, unlike any he had encountered before, emerged from the depths of space. They were sleek, with dark, imposing hulls that seemed to absorb the light around them, their presence a stark contrast to the cold, mechanical nature of the alien warship. The ships appeared out of nowhere, as if they had materialized from thin air. The alien sensors couldn't pick them up until it was too late. They moved with an eerie precision, and their power radiated from them like an unseen storm. It was clear these ships were not a simple military force. They were something far more dangerous. Vrax tried to issue orders to counter the threat, but his commands were met with silence. His crew had no response, as if they were paralyzed by some unseen force. It was at that moment that Vrax realized something far more terrifying than he could have imagined was unfolding before him. The ships that had appeared were not part of any known faction, and they did not respond to any of Vrax's attempts to communicate. As they closed in, the alien warlord's instincts screamed that he was outmatched. He had never felt fear like this before. He attempted to fire upon the ships, but the weapons failed to charge. The engines sputtered, and the entire ship began to lose power. Something was holding them in place, some force that seemed to be draining their energy. The alien forces could do nothing but watch as these mysterious ships surrounded them. A voice broke the silence. It was a calm, authoritative tone, one that carried a weight beyond anything Vrax had ever heard before. "Vrax, you have made a grave mistake." The voice seemed to come from everywhere at once, inside the ship, within the very walls themselves. It resonated deep in Vrax's mind, and for the first time, he felt a shiver of true fear. He had never been spoken to like this. The voice continued, its power growing with each word. "You are not the first to underestimate the humans, and you will not be the last to regret it." Vrax's mind raced. Who was speaking? What was this power? The voice was unmistakably human, but it came from nowhere. The strange ships closed in even tighter, and the very fabric of space seemed to shift around them. In that moment, Vrax understood. The warning had not been a mere threat. It had been a promise, an ancient and unbreakable rule of the galaxy, and he had broken it. As the alien warship continued to flounder, unable to defend itself, the voice spoke again. "You are out of time. Release the child, or face the consequences." There was no response from Vrax, no way to defend himself. He had no idea who, or what, was behind this mysterious force. But what he did know was that the galaxy was far older, far more complex, and far more powerful than he had ever imagined. The human child was not just a symbol. She was a key to something far greater, something that even Vrax's vast experience could not comprehend. He had awakened a force that could not be ignored, and now, the very balance of the galaxy would shift. Meanwhile, the resistance on Vero had already begun to mobilize. They had learned about the mysterious ships that had appeared near the alien fleet, and they were no longer just defending their colony. They were preparing for something much larger. The Protectors, as they called themselves, were not a faction nor a single race. They were an ancient order made up of humans and a handful of alien species that had pledged to defend humanity from any threat. For centuries, they had been watching, waiting for the moment when humanity would be ready to stand on its own. The events unfolding with the alien attack on Vero were that moment. The Protectors had known that one day, a power greater than any individual species would be necessary to safeguard humanity. And now, it had arrived. The child, captured and held by Vrax's forces, was no ordinary human. She was a descendant of the first humans to reach the stars, chosen by the Protectors themselves. Her capture had set a chain of events in motion that would bring about the end of the alien warlord's arrogance and the beginning of a new chapter in the galaxy's history. But even as the Protectors gathered their strength, they knew this was only the beginning. The galaxy was about to change forever, and Vrax was the first to feel the wrath of humanity's forgotten legacy. The tension on the alien warship reached its breaking point as the voice, calm yet unwavering, echoed through the corridors. Vrax, once the most feared warlord in the galaxy, now found himself powerless against an unseen force. His ship, which should have been an unstoppable weapon of destruction, was now completely at the mercy of these mysterious entities. The engines sputtered and failed, and the once imposing warship drifted aimlessly in space, its weapons offline and its communications cut off. Vrax's fear was palpable. He had conquered countless worlds, and yet, for the first time, he realized that his forces were helpless. The warning was real, and the galaxy was about to hold him accountable for his actions. In the midst of this chaos, the child, once a symbol of innocence and vulnerability, began to exhibit an extraordinary power. She had been held in a containment chamber, but as the mysterious force surrounded the ship, something inside her awakened. The child's eyes glowed with an intense ethereal light, and a quiet hum filled the air around her. It wasn't just her presence that was shifting the balance. It was something deep within her, a power that had been dormant for centuries, waiting for the right moment to emerge. The Protectors had known this moment would come. They had prepared for it. The Protectors' ships closed in, their technology far beyond anything Vrax had ever encountered. They were not simply warships. They were living, sentient vessels, infused with the ancient power of the galaxy's hidden guardians. The Protectors themselves were more than just warriors. They were stewards of an ancient order, tasked with protecting the most powerful and dangerous secret in the universe, the untapped potential of humanity. The galaxy had watched as humanity grew, and now it was time for humanity to prove its strength. And the child, held captive in the alien ship, was the key to unlocking that strength. As the alien fleet continued to falter, the Protectors made their move. Their ships surrounded Vrax's warship, cutting off any escape. They did not fire weapons. Instead, they emitted waves of energy that seemed to reverberate through space itself. The energy pulsed and surged, disrupting the very fabric of the alien vessel's systems. Slowly, but surely, the warship's power began to drain, and Vrax's once proud fleet was reduced to a helpless mass of dead metal. Inside the alien ship, the child's power grew stronger. The lights in her containment chamber flickered, and she began to glow with an otherworldly radiance. The air around her vibrated with an unseen energy, and the hum of the ship intensified. It was as if she were drawing power from the very core of the galaxy, tapping into an ancient force that had been long forgotten. Vrax, though desperate, could no longer maintain his defiance. His crew, once so loyal, had lost all will to resist. They, too, could feel the presence of the Protectors drawing closer, and the reality of their situation was becoming painfully clear. Vrax had underestimated the power of humanity. He had thought them weak, easy prey. But now he saw the truth. Humans were not just another species to conquer. They were something far more dangerous, a force in the galaxy it could not be controlled, not by him, nor anyone else. The alien warlord, realizing that there was no escape, ordered his remaining forces to prepare for a last-ditch defense. But even as he gave the command, it became apparent that his resistance was futile. The protectors had come, and they had come for more than just a battle. They had come to send a message to the entire galaxy. Humanity was not to be underestimated. In the control room, the child's power surged once more. The energy that radiated from her was so intense that it began to distort the very air around her, making the walls of the ship tremble. The power was not only hers, it was the collective will of every human being, past and present, woven into her very essence. Her ability to unlock this power was the result of humanity's long history, their struggle, their triumphs, and their mistakes. This child was not merely a victim of circumstance. She was a symbol of humanity's untapped potential, and the galaxy was now witnessing the beginning of something far greater than anyone could have imagined. The alien warlord, now completely aware of his failure, watched in disbelief as the child's power reached its zenith. It was a power unlike anything he had ever encountered, one that was beyond his understanding, beyond his capacity to control. The ship began to hum with a deep cosmic vibration, and then, in a sudden burst, the energy from the child enveloped the entire alien fleet. It was as though time itself had stopped. The galaxy seemed to hold its breath. The protectors, knowing the time had come, gave a final, silent command. The ships moved as one, surrounding the alien fleet with an unbreakable barrier. In that moment, the child's power radiated outward, consuming the alien forces in a flash of light. The warship shook violently as the ship's core began to collapse under the weight of the child's unleashed power. It was not destruction. It was the embodiment of the universe's balance being restored. The consequences of harming a human child were now fully realized. Vrax's ship, now completely powerless, began to break apart. The alien warlord watched in stunned silence as his once proud fleet disintegrated around him. His soldiers, his resources, his power, all reduced to nothing. The galaxy had spoken, and humanity had answered. The protectors had kept their promise. They had warned Vrax, and now he was forced to face the consequences of his arrogance. And as the last remnants of the alien fleet were consumed by the child's power, the galaxy's message was clear: never harm a human child, for the galaxy will pay the price. As the last remnants of Vrax's warship disintegrated in the wake of the child's overwhelming power, the galaxy seemed to exhale a collective breath. The silence that followed was deafening, as if the universe itself had paused to witness the final act of a long-forgotten law being enforced. The remnants of the alien fleet drifted in space, nothing more than debris now, their once gleaming ships reduced to smoldering wrecks. Vrax, the once feared warlord, had been utterly defeated, not by force alone, but by the sheer power of the human legacy that had awakened in the child. The protectors, their mission complete, withdrew their ships slowly, almost reverently, as if giving the galaxy time to process what had just occurred. They had not destroyed the enemy out of mere vengeance, but as a reminder that humanity was not to be underestimated. A reminder that a single child, a seemingly innocent being, could hold within them the force to change the fate of entire civilizations. It was a message to all the galaxy's inhabitants, one that would echo across the stars for centuries to come. Back on the human colony planet of Faro, the people began to emerge from their hiding places, watching in awe as the skies above them cleared. The threat was gone, but the air was thick with uncertainty. What would this new reality mean for them? The child who had been captured was now the symbol of humanity's strength, a strength no one had seen coming. The humans had been weak in the eyes of the galaxy, but now, that perception had changed forever. They were not prey. They were a force in their own right, and the universe had just been reminded of that. The child, still glowing faintly with an ethereal light, was brought back to the colony. The once innocent figure of a young girl had transformed into something far more complex, someone who embodied the power and potential of all humanity. Her awakening had not only saved her life, but had also triggered the rise of something far greater, the recognition that humanity was a force that could no longer be ignored. The protectors, who had been watching over humanity for centuries, made their presence known. They were not a government nor an empire, but something far older and more ancient, a collective of guardians who had kept the galaxy's fragile balance in check. They had known this day would come, and now that it had, they would ensure that humanity's place in the galaxy was forever solidified. The leader of the protectors, a tall and wise figure, stood before the people of Vero. His eyes were filled with a mixture of pride and solemnity as he addressed the colony. "You have proven to the galaxy that humanity is not weak, nor insignificant. You are a species of great potential. And now, the galaxy will understand your worth. But remember, this power comes with great responsibility. It is not for conquest, but for protection. Protect those who cannot protect themselves, and you will ensure that the balance of the universe is upheld." The words rang in the minds of the humans who listened. They had always feared that they were alone in a vast and indifferent universe, but now they knew that humanity had not just been a passive part of the galaxy's story. They were an active force that could shape its future. The Protector's message was clear. Humanity had the potential to be a guardian of peace, not just a participant in the ongoing struggle for dominance among the stars. The child, whose identity had remained shrouded in mystery, stood silently beside the leader of the Protectors. She was no longer just a symbol. She was the living proof of humanity's potential. Her glowing presence was a reminder that the universe was not just about technology and warships, but about something deeper, a force that came from within, the power of unity, of will, and of an untapped legacy. As the Protectors departed, leaving the colony of Vero in peace, a new era began. The galaxy, for all its complexity and chaos, had witnessed the rise of humanity. No longer the underdogs, no longer seen as weak, the humans now stood as equals to the greatest civilizations the galaxy had ever known. They had been given a warning, and they had responded. The price of harming a human child had been steep, but the galaxy would never forget the lesson it had learned. The humans of Vero, and all those who would hear this story in the coming years, now understood the truth of the warning. Harm a human child, and the galaxy will pay the price. The power of humanity had been unleashed, and it would shape the future of the stars for generations to come. And so, as the stars burned brightly above them, the humans looked up with a new sense of purpose. They were no longer mere travelers in the vastness of space. They were protectors, guardians, and powerful forces in their own right. The galaxy had been put on notice, and humanity had just begun to show what it was capable of.